Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lunch with Linda. I'm Linda Daniels, and you are now inside Northampton Walls. Today is February 13th, 2023, the day before Valentine's Day. I know after this, I am going to go buy a box of candy for that man of mine, and hopefully he'll share it. But I'm sure there'll be something nice waiting for me at home tomorrow. I'm so glad that you are here. Say hello so that we know that you are watching. And I don't feel like I'm talking just to myself. Although I don't mind doing that half the time, I still like to know that people are here and listening. I think we did a little promo this morning to test that Facebook and YouTube were working. And it seems like they are. Hi, Eileen. Hi, Bess. There you guys are on YouTube. That's great. And thank you. Thank you for being here. I've got a lot of things to try and cover today, not the least of which is I want to talk a little bit about ripping out. Hi, Marie. Hi, Penny. Hi, Dale. And how to make it as painless as possible, if that's even possible. But that's later on. First of all, I've got some stuff to show you, starting with the sweater right behind my back. This one right here. This is from something that I just finished over the weekend. It is the Tibetan yarn from Pasquale. It's going to be a Pasquale kind of day. We've had this yarn in for much of the fall. This is what it looks like. It is 70% virgin wool, merino wool, and 30% yak. So in the skein, this feels soft. It's a nice yarn, but in the sweater, it is so incredibly soft. It is like wearing creamy butter. Really, really nice drape. And I knit it on a size 6 needle, which is tighter than what the label actually calls for. I was talking to the sales rep about it. And when I told her that I was knitting on a 6, she goes, well, it does say a US size 6 or 7. And I think the gauge is perfect like this. The pattern is top down, very, very easy. A great sweater for beginners, a great sweater for first time top down knitters. And the pattern is one that we've got in the store, but you can also get it on Ravelry. It's from Quince and Company, and it's called Nina. And it looks like this. So it's fitted on this person. There is shaping at the side seams, a little bit of decreasing and then a little bit of increasing, which I chose not to do. In order for it to really fit well, I wanted it to just go down straight, and that's what I did. I didn't do any of the shaping that it calls for. This thing is a dream to knit with. The yarn is super, super smooth. And like I said, really, really creamy in texture. And it's going to be a real comforting sweater to wear. Light enough for this late winter into early spring. It will keep you warm. There is, you cast on and start right away with the garter stitch neckline, so there isn't any real finishing to do except for the button and buttonhole band. So this was a real fun knit to do and relatively quick. If you are knitting just this sweater, I was doing a whole bunch of other stuff between the time that I started it and the time that I finished it. So it did take me a little bit longer to get this model done. We will have it in the store. It took 8 skeins of this, and it's a comfortable size. I'd say that finished to about a medium, like 40, 42, would probably be able to wear it comfortably. The pattern does go down smaller and, of course, larger. And we do have plenty of stock in lots of colors. I used this color, so we don't have more of that teal, but there is this really nice blue. A kind of, I would almost call this a gray mauve. It is their gray, but it does have a hint of that purple touch to it. We've got this really bright purple which is just a beautiful color. And then Kate just also brought over the green, a really deep forest green. Of course, how could she? So we've got plenty of this in, and it is a real delight to knit with. I made it a Pasquale day. I wanted to finish that sweater because we did get in one of their linen and cotton blends. And this is the piece that I was working on yesterday. If you caught the Instagram post that I did, I knit this during the Super Bowl. This is going to be a shawl. It's called Herald by Janina Calillo. A really simple garter and yarn over pattern in a wedge. So you're increasing on one side only so that the other side is straight. This is the straight edge right here. This is one full skein so far, and I am going to use the second skein. Now this is a linen. It has a lot of linen in it, so it's very crisp, and it does I have to say it's a lot softer in the knit than it is in the skein. So when you come in the shop and feel this yarn, you're gonna kind of go, because linen does that. Everybody comes in and asks for linen, and then as soon as they touch it, they're like, This is 60% cotton, 28% linen, and 12% nettle. It has that really sharp, almost crisp feel to it. And I think it's perfect for this little shawl because the shawl is very open with all of those yarn overs and makes it very, very scrunchable, number one. Number two, when this yarn is washed, it's going to start to really soften up. So these are the colors that we got in. This is the color, no, this is the color that I'm knitting with, the two skeins of that.
It's
so we got
kumquat.
Kumquat is what it's called. You remember the names. It comes in 50-gram hank, and there's, let me check that yardage because I didn't write it down. There's 197 yards, so it's got really good yardage. So I know I'm going to be able to finish that Herald shawl in just the two skeins. You've seen the Herald shawl before on Instagram and Facebook. I shared a picture of Judy Raymond with her Herald shawl on in green. She had it on over a green sweater. So it is a real fun, and like I said, easy shawl because it crunches right up against your skin. So you can really make it small, even though it ends up being kind of big. Like I said, I'm about halfway through, maybe a little bit more than halfway, because even though this is only one skein, it's going to take more yarn to get across the rows because it's getting bigger and bigger. But look at how much that just comfortably, and it doesn't feel really, really bulky. So this is going to be a real fun one to finish and wash and then have it here. So two skeins of this. We have, although we have it on the website, we don't have pictures of.
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did?
No.
Oh, we had trouble getting pictures from the company, but that's now on the website. It's $15 a skein. So for $30, you've got plenty of time to make a summer and late spring shawl for your t-shirt wearing, just to give you that little bit of extra. Just a quick note too, I've got on the triangular Age of Brass and Steam, or Boneyard is another one that's really similar to it. It's a triangle, top down. You start with a few stitches and then grow it out. Stocking net stitch with a little bit of yarn over. And I want to show you this. I have it on over a cardigan, and I wrapped it this way. And then to secure it so that I have not been fooling around with those ends popping out or having to tighten or loosen it, I actually buttoned it through the top button. Just buttoned those ends right onto the top button, and it has held it completely secure and in place. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Button, pin, whatever you need to use to hold these little bandana shapes or triangle shapes in place. Because you know, when you just let them hang, if you don't have long ends, they can pop out and you feel like you're always losing it. So that's just a quick little tip right there. So this is what the Herald pattern looks like. It is a purchase. It's not free. It is a purchase pattern on Ravelry, but it was a lot of fun to do and went pretty quickly. I got a good chunk of it done during that anguishing Super Bowl yesterday. I wanted to tell you, if you didn't get the email that I sent out on Saturday, I have partnered with Northampton Volkswagen here in Northampton and spoken with them about contributing to their boxes of donations that they're going to be sending off to Turkey, and they are looking forward to whatever we can supply them with. It can be hats, it can be mittens or scarves. I threw out a comment about baby blankets as well, because there are plenty of young children and babies and even older people who even just a small blanket that they can put in their lap or wrap around their shoulders would be, I think, greatly appreciated. We're having 2 due-by dates. We're trying to get them our first load of stuff by the end of this month. We've gotten a great response already just from that email. I've already started a basket with a few things in it that people have had in their supply or already made things that they have dropped off. And that's what you should do. If you have something that you want to donate, just bring it here and we'll take care of getting it down to Northampton Volkswagen, and they can add it with their boxes of things that are going out. I heard from one of my customers already who had been down there to drop things off that they are getting quite a few donations as well. It is one of those situations where you just feel so completely helpless. There isn't a whole lot to do except in money or like this with things that might help them get through the rest of the winter. In the email that I sent out, I did share with you 2 reputable Turkish relief organizations, and I had a conversation with Emre from Earth Yarns about what can we do. He was at VogueNet Live over the weekend in New York City, and we were able to have a little chat, and he recommended either one of those. Now, Earth Yarns is all across the country. It's up in the north, based in Istanbul, so they did not suffer any real effects from the earthquake, but everybody that works there or that he knows there and his family there knew somebody or knew somebody who knew somebody who was devastated by this. So we love Earth Yarns and want to help this during this awful time for them. There is no required pattern. You can use any pattern you like. Some quick little hat that you can knit up over the weekend in a couple days. Use your stash. It doesn't have to be wool or acrylic. It can be anything that you think would help with the cold and the wind and the rain. Anything there at all. We'll accept everything. So I wanted to tell you about that. This week I have a Socks on 2 Circular Needles class on Wednesday. That is with the big bulky puffin. There's still time to sign up for that and come. It's not full. So that's happening on Wednesday. I think it's at 11 o'clock. And then also on Saturday, we have the Love Cables class. This is a pattern from Mini-Me on Ravelry, and it is a bottom-up cables that's a little bit different in a bulky weight yarn. So we've got about 4 or 5 people in that. I have room to take a couple more. So that's what's going on this week in the shop. I'm like with bated breath waiting for the new Lane book Neons and Neutrals that's supposed to be coming in. They just announced that they're doing another 52 weeks of socks. Hi, Bonnie. 52 weeks of socks volume 2. We've got that on order. I've also ordered the 52 weeks of socks volume 1. So we've got both of those things coming in, and we are expecting a restock of the Knitting the National Parks hat book. So if you've missed out on that and want to get your hands on one, that will be coming in this week as too. this week as well. We are beginning to take shipments of our cottons for spring and summer, so watch for those. Hey, Mary. I'll be showing you that stuff as we go along. But the big deal about today was I wanted to talk about ripping out and why that causes so much anxiety in people. There are two things that send shivers up people's knitting needles right down their spine. One is swatching, and that we're going to talk about another day. But the other thing is ripping out, and it is almost inevitable. If it makes you feel any better, I still end up ripping out. And why? Why does that happen? It can happen for a lot of different reasons. A lot of times I'm ashamed to say it's my thinking I know what I'm doing, and I go ahead and do it wrong because I don't read the pattern, I don't pay attention, I'm in a groove and I'm going, and all of a sudden things need to be different. It can be a misplaced cable or one turned in the wrong direction. It can be that you've knit away and all of a sudden realize that it's 10 times too small or 10 times too big. Whatever the reason, things happen. And what I have found in my 40 years of doing this is that there are two types of people when it comes to ripping out. There are those who immediately say, I can live with this. I'm not ripping out. I don't care how bad it is. And there are those who like right down to the beginning again and start all over all the time. It is up to you. There are plenty of problems that can be fixed without having to rip the whole thing out. There are cables that can be fixed, knits and purls that can be fixed. For me, it's always a question of how much time is it going to take for me to fix this versus how much time does it take for me to rip it out and just re-knit it again. Because some problems are just very small over a small area, and sometimes it involves the entire piece. So that is one question that I use in my evaluation of how much do I have to rip out. The other types of ripper-outers out there are the knitters who do it stitch by stitch. Even when they have to rip out hundreds of stitches, they very carefully take each and every stitch out one at a time. And I get it. There's nothing worse. I think one of the big fears of ripping out is that you're going to lose a stitch. The other group of ripper-outers are just take it off the needles and rip it. I did a video of this at home yesterday because I had to rip out part of the yoke of this sweater for a customer, and it was a problem all the way around. It wasn't just a simple problem, but there was a real problem in the cable twists, and we had to rip it out. I'm going to be posting that video after Kate and I play with it a little bit to make it a little bit more seeable, I guess is a good word. And I just took it all off the needle, ripped it, pulled it as quickly as possible, and then put it back on a needle. And I want to talk about that in a second. But it was the only way to go. This is way too many stitches and too complicated of a pattern to take it out stitch by stitch. And there were too many rows that needed doing. So it's bite the bullet, take them off the needle, rip them out. Here's a couple of tips. When you have to do that, when you have to rip out a lot, this is what I do. I am usually sick to my stomach, just like all the rest of you, because it means, when I look at it, it means hours of work that I've already put in. And I have too much to do to, be really upset about losing that kind of time. And so what I almost always end up doing is putting it away. You can call it putting it in timeout. You can call it something cute. You can put it in a pretty box, but I need to let it rest. Even if it's just for 2 days. In 2 days' time, I'm away from those hours, and they're not as painful as ripping it out right then and there. And it's the number one reason why I always have more than one project going at a time.
Yeah.
Never mind if I get stuck or if you have a little problem on one. It's so that if there's a big mistake and I have to put something away for a day, I've got plenty of other stuff that needs to work. It's just amazing how much difference that day or two can make in your feeling about the piece that you have to say goodbye to. Along those same lines, can you hand me that one? I had to rip out this sweater, and this wasn't painful at all because Eileen knit it. Ha! So
It wasn't your
it wasn't my knitting, but I had sent her the yarn to knit the thistle sweater, the Islington, and I had chosen colors that did not show up. And you can see right down here that light green. I didn't rip the entire yoke out. I left the light green in, and I'm re-knitting the yoke with the dark green and the dark purple, which are showing up a lot better. But the whole yoke, I'm saving this for Friday's finish class so we can do the neck, but I basically ripped the entire piece down to here. And like I said, sorry, Eileen, it's not your fault, it's mine. It wasn't painful at all because I didn't knit it. But it had sat here for a couple of days while I contemplated the colors and really thought about, am I going to rip it or not? So it didn't hurt as much. It's going to look a lot better. But that's when I take it right off the needle and rip it out. Now, you can rip using a ball winder, hook it up, but that only works when you have a very smooth, non-sticky yarn. The problem that a lot of people get into when they're ripping out is they've got sticky yarn or mohair, and as soon as you pull 2 stitches to rip them out, they hug each other and stick. And then you think, oh God, I've created a knot, or they're not going to come undone. That's when, tip number 2, you should have a smaller knitting needle so that you can pick those stitches apart. Just stick that needle between the 2 stitches and pull, and that separates the hairs and gives you the live stitches so you can continue to rip. If you do not have a size 1 or 2, hi Paula, circular needle, 24, 32-inch circular needle is great. Hey Maureen. In your toolkit, you absolutely have to get one. This is what's going to save your life. Don't use an interchangeable, use a fixed circular needle, size 1 or 2. This is a size 2, and I have both the 1s and the 2s in my toolkit, because when you do rip out, and I'm going to get closer so you guys can see. When you do rip out, your stitches are usually at attention, is what I call them. And if you are gentle, don't throw it around the room, even though you're tempted to throw it in the corner. If you have them like this, you can then take this smaller needle and it will go into the stitches. Let me get that needle out of the way. Into the stitches without pulling on them. They just slide right in there, because it's the pulling on the stitches that creates the dropout, pulls that row out, pulls the stitch out. That's the second thing. The third thing is, do not worry about how to put the stitches on, right or wrong, front or back. Do not. Just get the stitches on. Your first and only job in this instance is to get every single stitch on the needle. And because I was holding this up and talking, see, those 2 stitches are not on the needle. And that'll be a problem if I'm going to give that to Kate to fix. Just get the stitches on. Front to back, back to front, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if they're in the right order. Once you have gotten all of the stitches onto that smaller needle, you can then take your regular sized needle, and I don't even knit that first row. I just take the bigger needle and just slip the stitches onto the larger needle so that I can correct twisted stitches as I go. I can correct the order of the stitches. If you're doing cables, that will be the main thing that you see, that when you have those cabled stitches crossed over and you have to rip, if you're putting them back on a twist row, they're going to be hard to see what's the correct order of them. But just by doing a slip stitch row, basically just correcting them as you go, it's so much less frustrating when you are then ready to actually pick the stitches up, actually knit that next row, and get back going again. It feels so good just to take that little bit of time. And yes, there are a lot of mistakes that you can live with and a lot of reasons not to rip, but there's so many more reasons to rip. And so being afraid of it is not one of them in my book. And I'm happy to say that actually ripping out is a free service that we offer. So if you need something to be ripped out and you don't have the guts to do it, come on in. We'll happily do it for you and get you back on course, because there's nothing worse than putting something in timeout and letting it languish there for a couple of years. It doesn't have to be like that. You can get back to work within a couple of days. So that is, other than using lifelines, okay, there are certain times when you have to rip out lace. Bonnie will attest to this. There is that thing called lifelines, which is a way of incorporating I'm going to call it a stitch holder while you're knitting. You can do that with either a different piece of thread. You can put a skinny, silky like yarn through all of your stitches that are on the needle, so that if you ever do have to rip out, I would only recommend that if you, or do you figure that you'd notice missing stitches? Yeah, yes. Okay, Bess, I'm going to answer your question in a second. You can, with the interchangeable sets, you can stick a little piece of yarn in there and drag it along as you knit. You can even use your cords, your extra interchangeable cords, because if you take a smaller needle or smaller cord and hold it underneath your knitting, it will sit right there. I really only recommend lifelines when you're doing a complicated pattern like lace work that really does and has yarn overs. Yarn overs are tough to pick up, easy to replace. Really, really easy to replace, which leads me to Bess's questions. After you've picked up, do you count the stitches in your row? Yes. You want to count the stitches before you actually start knitting, because that gives you a clue. Number one, okay, there's a stitch or two somewhere in that row that I have missed. And then her second question, do you figure that you'd notice missing stitches? If you slip that first row before you actually knit to get them onto the bigger needle, chances are you're going to see it. And I always rip out at a table so that the table supports the weight of the sweater, because it's the drag down that will pull stitches down. So the table will help support it. You're being as gentle as possible with it, holding the stitches, the fabric, so that you can just insert that tiny little needle that's not taking any drag on it. You should notice any kind of missing stitches. Thanks, Carrie. I hope we never see you for ripping out, but yes, we do offer a rip out service. And we'll even send you to go get coffee or candy so you don't have to watch it happen. All right, everybody. I hope you have a really wonderful, loving Valentine's Day. I hope that you think about helping us out with our turkey donation. And in the meantime, go knit something. Bye.